as birds flying. Just that's how the chariots was moving. Like the scriptures say, as birds flying, man. These is birds. These are birds. Those are the birds. But the chariots were way higher than that. And I'm barely zoomed in. I'm gonna zoom out. You can still see the birds right there. But when you zoom in, you can see them too. There you go. And then the chariots is back. There are the chariots right there. There go the chariots. Chariots right above us, as you can see. And then where the birds at? The birds still over here? There go the birds flying off. Them is the birds. Those are the birds. They up out of there. You know what I'm saying? And then the chariots. Let's see if they here. There go the chariots. Don't tell me. Come on, man. We up out of here, man. This damn devil in trouble, man. Ain't no reason to fear, man. Let's call Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. I'm looking at it on my phone. Look, I'm looking right here on my phone. Yeah. You see it? I'm zoomed all the way in. I'm zoomed in, man. Yeah, I just seen it.
It's another one right here.
I just seen it fly.
That's another one right there.
Damn, I lost it.
That's another one right there. Bam. But it's another one fake right there in front of it. It's another one fake, and it's another one right there. It's another one right there. It's three of them. There's one right there, one right there, one right there, bro.
See one.
Keep looking, you'll see them.
It's over.
There's three of them, bro. I see three of them, bro.
Done dealing.
Shalom. I want to start off by giving all glory and honor to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and peace and salutations to the hopeful elect who are continuing to fight and teach this thing of ours in truth and sincerity. Under Brother Manatazak with GMS Ancient of Days in Los Angeles, currently teaching with the Akim in Sherman Oaks. And today through the Spirit, I want to get into a lesson going into the scriptures and the precepts showing and proving that the chariots of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai are what the world ignorantly call UFOs or UAPs. Okay, now as you've seen by the thumbnail of this video, I added an image of Ron Dalton because you know he's the current flavor of the week. He's a Jake that wrote the book and the documentary Hebrews to Negroes, and he's been coming up recently against IUIC with his recent debate against Bishop Nathaniel, who's the head of the IUIC. But one of the things that Ron Dalton is adamant about is that there are no such thing as UFOs. And when it comes to the scriptures, he believes that the chariots aren't speaking about UFOs, but actual horse and buggy wagons. Now, true indeed, when you go into the scriptures, those type of chariots are mentioned, okay? But at the same time, when you go into the scriptures and it speaks about the return of Yahweh Shai, and it speaks of the angels, okay, those are speaking about interdimensional vehicles, okay? And Lord willing, this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect as we go through these precepts, as we go to the etymology of the words, and as we prove our stance, okay? Because when you go through it and you read it in context, it's not really hard to be understood. But as the scriptures say, the deceived and the deceiver are his. both of those belonging to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Because at the end of the day, those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear are going to understand what the scriptures are speaking about. But through the Spirit, we're going to begin in the book of Psalms 104. And we're going to begin in verse 3. And once again, Lord willing, this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect. So this is Psalms 104, beginning at verse 3. It says, "Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angel spirits, his ministers, a flaming fire." Okay, now the reason I wanted to start here is to show that when it speaks about the chariots, it says he who maketh the clouds his chariots, because the vehicles of the Heavenly Father are from the fourth dimension, and when they come into this realm, they can cloak themselves in the clouds. Okay, that shouldn't be hard to be understood. Okay, especially when you consider what a quote-unquote UFO or UAP traditionally looks like. Okay, it's a flying saucer. Basically, if you put two plates together, that's the common image of a chariot. Now, they do come in all different sizes and shapes. I'm speaking traditionally of the shape of a chariot. Okay, that's why they call them flying saucers. And this is exactly what this scripture is speaking about. Who maketh the clouds his chariots, because his chariots, the chariots of Yahweh Shemashai, cloak themselves in the clouds. It says, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, because these chariots, they fly. Okay, all throughout the scriptures, they have different similitudes to describe them, such as a roll, a wheel within a wheel, a whirlwind. Okay, when you look at the things that the prophets used to describe these chariots, okay, that they sound nothing like the traditional horse and wagon that were prevalent during that time, because if that was the case, they would have just said that. Okay, and it shouldn't be too hard outside of the realm of possibility to consider that the angels ride around in vehicles, because we ourselves ride around in vehicles. Okay, it says, who maketh his angel spirits, his ministers, a flaming fire. The angels aren't flesh and bone. Okay, so the vehicles that they ride in aren't going to be comparable to something that a quote-unquote human would ride in. You even have these different accounts with the Navy and the military pilots that say that the chariots that they've seen, okay, do maneuvers that are impossible for the human body to withstand. Okay, and the reason is because they are being piloted by beings from another dimension, by the heavenly angels. Okay, now when you look up the word chariot in Psalms 104 and 3, it's the word rakab, okay, which is H7398, I believe. Okay, which is the Hebrew word rakab. When you look into it, it means a vehicle. Okay, a vehicle. And when you look up that Strong's definition, it has nothing to do with a horse pulling a wagon. Now, on the contrary, you can go to the book of Kings, 1 Kings 10, chapter 10 and 26. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 26, going to the account where the Queen of Sheba was visiting King Solomon, and it was going over all of his different riches that he had during that time. Okay, this is 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 26. It says, and Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the cities for chariots and with the king at Jerusalem. So this is basically going into King Solomon, all the substance that he had. But the reason I brought this out is to show you that these chariots that is talking about in the book of 1 Kings chapter 10 are talking about actual horses pulling wagons, as you traditionally see. Now that word for chariots in 1 Kings 10 and 26 is H7393, which is Rekeb. Very similar to what we read in Psalms 104 and 3. But when you go into this particular definition in 1 Kings 10 and 26, for Rekeb, it goes into to millstone. And what is a millstone? Okay, a millstone, it looks like a wheel. Okay, and the wagons, the chariots in the ancient world were pulled by horses and rolled on wheels. Okay, it also says riders, troop of riders, horsemen, or a cavalry. Okay, so you see the difference between the two. Now you have to read this in context. This is talking about chariots and horsemen, which were mentioned in the same sentence. Okay, because you're going to find when you go into the definition of some of these, the words are not interchangeable. And what I mean by that is, we go to Psalm 68 and 17 for our next precept. Psalms, the 68th chapter, verse 17, it says, the chariots of the Most High are 20,000, even thousands of angels. The Lord is among them, as in Sinai in the holy place. Now, you go into that word chariots in Psalm 68 and 17, okay, it's 87393 Rekeb, which is the same that we read in 1 Kings, okay, 10 and 26. So one would believe that this is speaking about the same thing, but you got to remember to read it in context. Okay, these are the chariots of the Lord, not the chariots of men. Okay, these are the chariots that the angels ride in, as it says in Psalms 68 and 17. Okay, so the vehicles of the angels are not like the vehicles of men. Okay, so that's where the confusion can come in if you're not reading it in context. You will come to think that this is speaking about angels actually riding around with horses and be in a wagon, but this is not what it's speaking about. This is actually speaking about actual UFOs or UAPs. Okay, so with that being said, let's get the book of Ezekiel chapter 1. Okay, and everybody knows Ezekiel, the first chapter, goes into Ezekiel's wheel. Okay, now if this was speaking about simple horses dragging wagons, the details written within this chapter wouldn't be so prevalent, because horses and wagons were very known back then. But you got to remember, terms like UFO, UAP, flying saucer weren't known back in the ancient world, so the prophets had to use words that they were familiar with. And that's why it helps us coming back in our same lot, going over these precepts to explain them more thoroughly, so that you can understand what it was the prophets actually saw. Okay, that's why the scriptures say the spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. This is Ezekiel 1, and I just want to hit the point, beginning at verse 4. And the headline reads, Ezekiel's vision of 4 living creatures. Okay, now it says, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north. Now, as I mentioned earlier in my opening statement, some of the terms that the prophets used to describe these chariots was whirlwind, okay, a flying roll, a wheel within a wheel. Well, Ezekiel is talking about what he beheld was like a whirlwind. A whirlwind is something that spins. Flying saucers traditionally, according to different eyewitnesses, spin. Okay, so this lets you know that this isn't speaking about something that's being dragged by a horse and on actual wheels. Okay, it says, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof was the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. Now this is speaking about a chariot. Now when I read this, Ezekiel 1 and 4, the best representation that I could give as far as a visualization is when you see the movie Independence Day and those ships breaching the atmosphere with the fire unfolding around the ship as it enters the atmosphere. Okay, that's exactly what this is talking about, and this is the vision that Ezekiel saw. Okay? He saw a chariot coming into the atmosphere out of a fire. Okay? Now, when you look up that word amber in Ezekiel 1 and 4, it's a chasmal, which is bronze. Okay? So it's letting you know that this is something that's metal. Okay? He saw something metal coming out of the sky, out of the fire. Okay? And that's the point I wanted, letting you know that this is a UFO, so to speak. Okay? This is not a horse and buggy. All right? Let's get let's further prove that point. Let's go to the book of 2 Kings. 2 Kings 2, and we'll begin at verse 11. Okay, and this is the account of Elijah, okay, being taken. This is 2 Kings 2. The point is in 11, but the headline above verse 9 reads, Elijah is taken to heaven in a chariot of fire. Okay, so this is 2 Kings 2 and 11, and it says, and it came to pass as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. Okay, Elijah went up by the whirlwind into heaven. So this is letting you know that he went up into a whirlwind. What horse and buggy do you know can bring somebody up into a whirlwind? Okay, the whirlwind is talking about the chariot. Okay, but the point that I wanted was when it reads, and parted them both asunder, meaning when this chariot appeared, it separated Elijah from Elisha. Okay, and it separated them by what? By way of the tractor beam. Okay, that literally beamed Elijah up into the ship. Okay, I'm gonna read it again. This is the book of 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 11. And it came to pass as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it and cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more, and he took hold of his own clothes and rent them in two pieces. Okay? Now, when he said a chariot of Israel, he was talking about a ship. And when he was talking about the horsemen thereof, he was talking about the power that the chariot came in. Okay? By abducting Elisha up into the ship. We have a common term today that we use for the vehicles that we drive around. It's called horsepower. So him using horses is just symbolic for the power that this whirlwind came in. The closest term he had readily available to describe a vehicle and the strength, okay, and its magnificence. Okay. Now, another precept we could use is in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. Okay. The book of Acts chapter 1, beginning at verse 9. Okay. This is the book of Acts chapter 1, verse 9. And this is going into the account of Yahushua ascending into heaven. Well, how did Yahushua ascend into heaven? He ascended in a chariot. So let's read it. I'm just going to hit the point. Acts 1, beginning at verse 9, it says, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up. Okay, he was taken up, meaning this was something that happened forcefully. He was taken up, and what received him? It says, and a cloud received him out of their sight. So you see the symbology that the prophets continue to use. Okay, a cloud received Yahushua. So just as Elisha was beamed up, Yahushua was beamed up. Verse 10, and while they looked steadfast toward heaven, meaning they were looking up at this ship, it says, as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel. These two men being two angels, which also said, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Yahushua, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. So these angels are basically telling the disciples that the same way you've seen Yahushua be taken up into heaven is the same way he's going to return during his second coming. So a chariot took him up, and a chariot is going to bring him back. Now we could read that in the book of Revelation. Revelation 1, I believe it's 1 and 17. Let's see. Is it 1 and 17? Let's see. Let's see. Or is it 1? No. 1 and 7. Salakia. Going into the return of Yahushua. This is Revelation 1 and 7. It says, behold, he cometh with clouds. He's coming with clouds, okay? He's coming with chariots, with the vehicles of the heavens. And every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. And all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him, even so, amen. So when Yahushua returns, he's coming with the clouds, just as a cloud received him out of the sight of the disciples. Okay? And this is the salvation that we're waiting for. We're waiting to be delivered by way of chariots. And yes, it may seem like something from a sci-fi movie. It may seem fantastical to those that don't believe. Okay? But this is exactly why in Wisdom of Solomon it talks about the strangeness of our salvation. Because it sounds strange to say that, yeah, we're going to be delivered from Babylon the Great by being abducted into UFOs. Okay? But this is exactly what the scriptures speak about. And we can prove that in the Apocrypha. Okay? I quoted it, so I might as well get it through the Spirit. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5. Okay? Once again, this is in the Apocrypha, which, yes, is canon. Okay? Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Okay? It says, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, so far beyond all that they looked for. Okay? Why? Because they can't fathom that what we're speaking about is actually going to take place. It sounds like something from a movie. Okay? But this is the Most High's movie. And you have the prophets telling you exactly how it's going to go down. Okay? And you have our enemies, primarily our public enemy number one to our nation, Esau Edom, who is going to be amazed at the strangeness of our salvation. But he knows that chariots exist. They're starting to show themselves now at an all-time high, to the point now where they're starting to put out, you know, AI videos and CGI just to mask the numerous numbers of sightings that are taking place around the globe to confuse the masses. But the prophets know that they exist. We've seen them. Especially us here at Great Millstone. That's why I added that video in the beginning of this lesson of the chariots visiting our camp out here in Los Angeles, which they do constantly. Every time we look up, the chariots are there. Okay? And it's a faith booster for us because we know that the angels are around us. And the scriptures say that the angels encampeth around them that fear the Lord, and we fear Yahushua, which is why we do this work in truth and sincerity. Which is why we do these video epistles, which is why we hit the highways and hedges, which is why we try to keep the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of our ability. Okay? These are the things that are going to take place in our lifetime. Okay? Let's get Revelation 11 and 12. Just to show you that no matter where you go in the scriptures, Old Testament, the Apocrypha, the New Testament, even us today, continuing in the book of Acts, we're all speaking the same things as those that came before us. It's just now we have the full understanding of what the prophets wrote about. Okay, this is Revelation 11, verse 12. It says, and they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. Okay, come up hither. So we're going to be beamed up, called up into a cloud, into a chariot, the fathership of Yahushua. You have that old Negro spiritual who will be coming around the mountain when he comes. They changed it to she but the original lyrics where he's coming with, he'll be coming, drive around the mountain when he comes. That's speaking about Yahweh Shai, that the slaves were singing in the fields. You got to remember, when we were singing these old Negro spirituals back during the time of slavery, speaking about the chariots coming forward to carry me home, right? This was before the airplanes were around. This was before the Wright brothers. So what were the slaves singing about? What were they singing in those fields? They were singing about the chariots. They were seeing the chariots. UFOs, UAPs. That's always been a part of Hebrew Israelite history. And nothing has changed unto this day. And the Lord, Yahweh Hashem Ashai, is going to make it known, okay, that the prophets he sent to preach this word in these last days were prophesying truth, whether you believed it or not, okay? Our salvation is coming by way of the chariots. Let's get Isaiah 66, verse 15. It says, for behold, the Lord Yahweh Hashem Ashai will come with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord Yahweh Hashem Ashai plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord Yahweh Hashem Ashai shall be many. So that's not just talking about heathens, that's talking about the wicked of the Israelites as well, especially those that mock and scoff this pure word. Okay? Let's get Zechariah 5 and 1, our next precept. Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1. Okay, and when you read Zechariah the 5th chapter, the headline reads, visions of a flying scroll. Okay, not visions of a flying horse carrying a wagon. You see the difference? If that was the case, that's what the prophets would have wrote about. This is Zechariah 5 and 1. Then I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll, going to like a roll, like a bread roll. And what is a bread roll likened unto? That we could extrapolate as a similitude for today. The famous cigar-shaped chariot, or the tic-tac chariot. Okay? This is what Zechariah was speaking about. It says, and he said unto me, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. Does that sound like he's describing a horse pulling a wagon? No, it doesn't. Verse 3. Then said he unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off. So that everyone that stealeth is Esau Edom. And who did he steal? He stole you so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native Americans. And we are in his hands to this day. Okay, he stole the lands, peoples, identity, history. Okay. This is the plague that's coming to judge Esau Edom. It says, as on this side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off, as on that side according to it. Okay. It says, I will bring it forth, saith the Lord Yahweh Hashem Ashai of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief. The house of the thief going into America. Okay. It says, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name. Okay. It says, and it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it with the timber thereof, and with the stones thereof. So this is the chariots talking about coming to judge Esau Edom and coming to burn America, Babylon the Great, which is that great destruction that's coming, as well as the nuclear missiles, the ICBMs. Those that hear us preach about this often mock and scoff and scorn at this message, asking us how we're going to be delivered, because we speak so freely and confidently, but we know we're going to be delivered by way of the chariots. Because when the chariots come, they're coming for two missions: to destroy and to deliver. Okay. So with that, we'll end this back in the Apocrypha, in the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, beginning at the top. It says, and it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night, and lo, there arose a wind from the sea, and it moved all the ways thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven, And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth filled it when it filled the fire. Okay, this is speaking about the lasers, that concentrated fire coming from the chariots. Okay, it says, and after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of heaven to subdue the man that came out of the sea. Okay, because he's coming from the heavens, he's coming from space, the waters, the sea. It says, but I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. A great mountain. Okay, this sounds nothing like a horse pulling a wagon. This is likened onto something that is going to measure the face of the earth. This is the fathership. You know, the world often calls the UFOs, UAPs, motherships, you know, where all the other ships come from. This is the fathership, the ship that Yahweh Shai is going to be driving. Okay, I gave you the parable, not the parable, but the old Negro spiritual. He'll be coming with the mountain when he comes. That's speaking about Yahweh Shai. And he's coming in our lifetime. Okay, and we say that confidently. We believe that, pursuing the prophecy. Okay. It says, but I would have seen the region or place where about the hill was graven, and I could not. So he likened what he's seen onto a mountain, but it wasn't a mountain, because had it been a mountain, he would have seen where it was erected from and where it was flying from. But this mountain was so big, okay, that he knew it wasn't an actual mountain. This is just what it was comparable to. Okay. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. So when all these nations finally see Yahweh Shai breach this atmosphere, standing atop that fathership, they're going to come and try to fight him, just like they tried to do in Independence Day. Now, we saw how that movie ended, but that's not going to be the ending for Yahweh Shai and his host. Yahweh Shai is going to complete a flawless victory against all the armies that come against him. Okay? They're not going to be able to touch the angels and to touch Yahweh Shai, because he's coming with great power and great glory. And here's the proof. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war. But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been, a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. Once again, this is a similitude for the lasers, the weapons coming out of the chariots. Okay. It says, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. Okay, so that's the type of power Yahweh Shai is coming with. You can see movies like World of Worlds, when those tripods erected from the ground and those sabers came out, you know, blitzing everybody and turning them into powder. Okay, or when that concentrated beam of energy came from that ship at Independence Day and blasted the buildings, and that fire unfolded and disintegrated everything in its path. That's the type of power Yahweh Shai is coming with. That's why Esau Edom puts it in these movies, because he gets it from the scriptures. But it's about to become our reality here in these days to come. And the prophets of Yahweh Shai can't wait. So with that, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the hopeful elect. I want to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. And peace and salutations to the hopeful elect who are continuing to fight and teach this thing of ours in truth and sincerity. This has been your brother Manatazak, and until the next lesson, Shalom.